Hello and welcome to the program today. I'm Layo Olarinde. The global spotlight is currently on U.S. President Donald Trump's announcement of sweeping tariffs on the country's global trading partners. As anticipated, several African countries are among those affected by this move. The new levies unveiled on Liberation Day are part of what Mr. Trump calls a reciprocal tariff policy aimed at addressing trade imbalances and promoting domestic industries. Mr. Trump has announced the minimum of 10% tariff on all imports to the U.S. and additional reciprocal tariffs for African countries, including Nigeria, that's been hit by 14%, and South Africa by 30%. Other African countries affected are Ghana, Lesotho, Madagascar, Mauritius, Botswana, amongst others. For South Africa, the country is included in the long list of countries dubbed the worst offenders, which also involves China, Japan, and the European Union that now face higher U.S. rates. According to the list, South Africa charges 60% on U.S. imports, although this is not just tariffs. And in turn, Trump said his country would implement a discounted 30% tariff on South Africa, one of Africa's biggest and most developed economies. Meanwhile, Lesotho has an imposed tariff of 50% on all its exports to the U.S. It stands as the second highest rate of any country in the world after China. The tiny southern African country has a large trade surplus with the U.S., mostly made up of diamonds and textiles, including jeans. Other African countries hit with extra tariffs include 47% for Madagascar, 40% for Mauritius, 37% for Botswana, and 30% for South Africa. In the meantime, officials in South Africa are reaffirming the country's commitment to global collaboration despite U.S. tariffs. In an exclusive interview with Channels TV, South Africa's G20 Sous Sherpa Ambassador Zolisa Mambongo has emphasized the need for African G20 members to champion the continent's development priorities while addressing global challenges. Speaking at the second G20 Sherpa meeting in Pretoria, he highlights the importance of collective action under South Africa's G20 theme, Solidarity, Equality, and the meeting is part of the country's G20 presidency engagements. In light of Trump's new tariffs, Mabongo states that South Africa will continue its engagement with Washington, D.C.
It's important for us to meet with the United States Sherpa, as they will be taking over the presidency of the G20 in 2026 after South Africa. Therefore, the discussions in Washington were very productive. We reached a certain level of comfort that they will be participating in the meetings starting today and tomorrow. But also they assured us that they are already preparing and they will make an announcement soon about their hosting in 2026. Well, interestingly, one of our priorities in our G20 presidency is a whole question of inclusive growth. How do we ensure that growth happens in all countries, but not just growth for its own sake? It must be inclusive. So we are focusing on that, and we think that African countries will, of course, like South Africa, they will engage with the United States. But our agenda of the G20 really has got priorities that are priorities also for the African continent. So they are integrated, and there's a perfect alignment between South Africa's priorities and those of the African continent.
Also explore the implications of these tariffs and what they mean for the African continent. We're joined now by Associate Professor of Politics and International Relations, Professor Elias Parler. He joins us from Johannesburg. Thank you, Professor, for your time on Network Africa.
Thank you so much for having me, and good evening to your viewers.
Good evening to you. Professor, I know this was expected. We've been, expecting the tariffs from the U.S., and it is sure to have major impacts on South Africa, Nigeria, and these other countries, isn't it?
Absolutely. There is no better way of putting it other than to say this is most definitely a tariff bloodbath, such as the likes of which we've never seen before. And it's part of the agenda that America is currently pursuing, which is to make America great again, even if that actually means having to employ protectionist, trade policies that are meant to safeguard domestic industries in America. Yes, in Africa, definitely bound to have far-reaching implications, given the fact that many African countries really depend on some of the trade privileges that they used to gain or they used to have from America, at least in terms of being able to send their products to America duty-free. But all that seems to be over now.
Well, President Trump argues that, these tariffs are a response to what he calls unfair trade practices. From your perspective, is there merit to this claim, particularly concerning South Africa, which we see has 30%? And what does this mean for U.S.-South Africa trade relations?
But the thing is that Donald Trump has been singing the message of unfair trade practices that are currently being practiced by many countries around the world since the beginning of his presidency, but he has never really explained what he means by unfair trade practices. By unfair, one is obviously bound to believe that he means that America is not really benefiting positively from its trade relationships with other countries in the world that it is trading with. But insofar as Africa is concerned, it's not quite sure what he means by that. Perhaps what he means by unfair trade practices is that African countries, through the AGOA scheme, they have been given free access, to the American market, all in a bid to help African countries to industrialize and, of course, to grow. But I guess for Donald Trump, what that actually means is that African countries are growing at the expense of America and American people and American economy. For him, that is very much unfair. Perhaps if you are going to actually analyze the meaning of unfair against the backdrop of the lack of messages that come from Washington clarifying what they mean by fairness or unfairness, one can only basically deduce it within the context of AGOA, which has been given free access to African countries to access the American market, which Donald Trump is not very happy with at the moment.
And, Lesotho, we're seeing it have the highest tariffs on the continent, the second highest in the world. That's one of the southern African countries. We've also seen Madagascar with 47%, Mauritius 40%, Botswana 37%. Are there diplomatic or perhaps economic strategies that this southern Africa region could pursue to mitigate the impact of these tariffs?
Well, it is one of the most absurd, trade tariff impositions. 50% against Lesotho, which is a member of AGOA, and 47% again for Madagascar, 40% for Mauritius, South Africa 30%, Botswana 37%. I think the question of whether or not it is possible to mitigate the disastrous effects of these decisions and announcement by Donald Trump's administration really depends on whether Donald Trump really wants to listen to any of these African countries. Are there any diplomatic channels? Are the wires of communication as wide open as everybody thinks? Now, my assessment tells me that the wires of communication are not as wide as we all think. For instance, South Africa has been trying to at least get the ear of Washington in the wake of the current controversial bill, expropriation of land bill, where they try to clarify to the American Republican senators, as well as other high officials in the White House, as to what it really means and what the implications are. But they've not really succeeded. Only that in the case of diplomatic negotiations, Washington has only given an ear to, I would say, right-wing organizations in South Africa, but they've actually not wanted to listen to any official from South Africa. As to whether or not Washington would want to listen to any official or any country from Southern Africa, be it Lesotho, be it Madagascar, be it Botswana, or even South Africa, one can never really know. And I think at the moment it looks to me that Washington is not really quite interested. And I think there's definitely merit to this kind of assertion, given the recent events in the last 2-3 weeks or so since Donald Trump has been in power.
Yes, indeed. And, all African countries have the baseline 10% tariff, but like we've highlighted, some countries more than the other. Economists are saying this new tariffs make a clear departure from the more open trade policies that we've seen, with the U.S.-Africa relations. In light of all of this, how do you foresee, relations now moving forward?
Well, America is unflinchingly unapologetic protectionist at the moment, and they are not going to explain to anybody why the sudden, change or shift in, in approach to how they actually trade with other countries, not least African countries. I think what it actually really means in the long run, at least from the context of AGOA, which is, I think, the point of departure from which we need to at least have a bit of understanding in terms of the relationship that Africa actually has with America at the moment. That AGOA is as good as gone. It's not going to be renewed in September, or at least the prospects of it being renewed in September are actually quite slim. It basically means that going forward, we're going to have to, as a continent, try to diversify our trading relationships and actually look elsewhere beyond Washington, because Washington is actually quite set on protecting its own industries by putting these protectionist measures, where 10% of tariffs have actually been imposed as a minimum against all imports from Africa, and that basically tells you everything that you need to know about the future of trade relationships between Washington and Africa. Basically, meaning to say that it is not fair game anymore. The rules have changed, and we have to learn the new rules of engagement with Washington. If that means diversifying our trade relationships, so be it. And I think that will actually be a very wise thing to do as a continent, given that AGOA itself is actually very much hanging in the balance. And the future of AGOA itself, I think, is also pretty much as good as gone.
All right then, Professor Elias Parler, Associate Professor of Politics and International Relations, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
We're still in southern Africa, but now on politics. The ruling party in Zimbabwe, Zimbabwe's African National Union Patriotic Front, ZANU-PF, has commented on the arrest of 95 anti-government protesters for promotion of public violence during a press conference in Harare. They warn others who may harbor variant ideas that the people of Zimbabwe will take notice. Authorities reported that 95 individuals were arrested on charges of promoting public violence on Monday for taking part in an anti-government protest in Harare. Zimbabwe police have also deployed in the capital and several other cities where they were deployed to neutralize demonstrations against President Emmerson Mnangagwa's term extension.
We are a very vigilant population, very risk averse, because we have gone through the throes of war. And that's exactly what they exhibited yesterday. And they also wanted the assurance that their state is in charge. The army, the police, and the security service are in charge of the situation. So once that turned out to be, their confidence was restored. And next day they are back at work. ZANU-PF is a mass party. So we are not a vanguard party. We are a mass party. Along the way of a mass party, there are bound to be other individuals who may have certain ideas, and every once in a while they may try to test their mettle along with those ideas. But in this instance, the party has shown that it is very much united. We just had our Central Committee meeting. Everybody came out there, united. We are proceeding with the affairs of the party in a united way. And the rejection of that element, that individual and his agenda of thuggery, of and procedural removal of leadership from power, was rejected.
Senegal's parliament has approved changes to the country's amnesty law, potentially paving the way for the investigation and prosecution of security personnel and members of the former government suspected of abuses. 126 lawmakers, mostly members of the ruling PASTEF party, voted yes for the changes, while 20 legislators voted against it after nearly 11 hours of debate. The changes remove exceptions for torture, assassination, and murder. The amnesty law was adopted last March during the final days of President Macky Sall's administration. In the meantime, Mozambique's parliament has unanimously approved a new law aimed at fostering national dialogue and political reconciliation, marking a significant step towards restoring stability in the country. The legislation, which includes constitutional revisions and changes to presidential powers, is part of a broader peace effort, an agreement signed on March 5th between the President, Daniel Chapo, and all political parties. The proposed law received overwhelming support from all 4 parliamentary benches, with the ruling Mozambique Liberation Front, Frelimo, emphasizing its role in strengthening democracy. Shirley Ayoko Bochwe, the former Ghanaian Minister for Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, has assumed office as the Secretary General of the Commonwealth. Speaking at the Commonwealth Secretariat headquarters in London, she pledges to advance the values of the Commonwealth Charter at a time of growing global tensions and shifting alliances. She succeeds Patricia Scotland, whose 9-year term ended in March. She is the first African woman, the second African overall, to lead the association of 56 countries, which make up a third of the world's population and more than a quarter of the United Nations membership. Let's listen now to her first address to the nations.
Trade and investment hold the key to our economic transformation. By seeing the Commonwealth market as a key to expanding industrialization, trade and services for all our countries, industrialized or developing, big or small, we can unlock extraordinary opportunities, driving prosperity, creating jobs, and lifting up communities. I am determined that we will continue to empower our women and young people with the tools, knowledge, and opportunities they need to succeed. Closing the digital gap means opening doors to education, healthcare, and economic opportunity. It is also the moment for innovation and strategic partnerships, especially with the private sector and research institutions in the face of the greatest challenge of our times, climate change. For so many of our member states, the impacts are already devastating. Our response must be bold, urgent, smart, and united for a green and just future. And we must work together with other multilateral bodies to transform the international financial system, taking into account the critical issues of climate and other vulnerabilities. Let me conclude on a personal note. It is a great honor to be the first African woman to serve as Secretary General. As a daughter of Ghana, the first African country to join the Commonwealth, I feel a deep personal connection to our family of nations. As I take on this role, I do so with profound optimism and unwavering belief in what we can achieve together. With the support of our team at the Secretariat, drawn from all across the Commonwealth, I will work every day to honor and repay the trust and confidence which has been placed in me. The challenges we face are real and serious, but together we are more than equal to them. Sustained by the values that bind us: democracy, good governance, peace, human rights, and equal opportunity for all, we will build a future in which opportunity, dignity, and prosperity are within reach for all. So let us move forward with purpose, with courage, and with an unshakable commitment to a Commonwealth that truly thrives together.
Back here in Nigeria, residents in Lagos are still reeling from the physical and mental impact of a traffic gridlock on Wednesday that brought the city of Lagos to a standstill, particularly on the Lagos Island area. Aside the heavy downpour of rain in the city, the closure of a major bridge called the Independence Bridge caused the logjam. Many residents lament being on the road for several hours for a journey that would have taken only minutes. Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has apologized for the inconvenience, explaining that excavation work has already commenced on the bridge, making it impossible for the pathway to be reopened to commuters.
Victoria Island is locked down, closing hours on Wednesday as a result of the partial closure of the Independence Bridge. The closure was announced by the federal government of works for urgent repairs. Motorists traveling from Ahmadu Bello and Adeola Odeku inwards Marina, Eko Bridge, Onikon and its environs were on standstill for several hours, affecting economic activities. Some residents who plied the route share their concerns, while others commend the authorities for swinging into action.
I was coming from Lekki to 1004 Estate. I take more than 4 hours to reach 1004 Estate yesterday, and now I just want to go to Senegal to get some material to do my work, and I have to trek from 1004 to this body camp now. I'm looking to get towards TBS, whether I can get a bus. You can see how I'm sweating.
If they can make this other lane a two-way drive, so everyone don't have to use the access road, I mean, it will solve a lot of problems.
Our maintenance culture is not there, but now this is what we really want. They maintain the road as of when due, so that it will not cause havoc.
The situation has prompted the Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu to visit the area and apologize to citizens for the ugly situation. But he says the road cannot be reopened until the rehabilitation work is complete.
This apology is important so that we can take full responsibility as a government, both at the national and sub-national level, for just taking our citizens through an unfortunate incident. Given what they've done in the past 2 days, in my view, and from engineering conversation, makes it difficult to reverse it. So one of the things that we're going to see very quickly is that they're going to advance the work very quickly. They'll probably be working into the night, and to see how they can reduce the timeline from the 6-7 weeks that they are planned to about 4 to 5 weeks.
He's appealing to the people to plan their movement to reduce gridlock.
Over the years, erosion has gone underneath and is sitting on nothing. So that is indeed an engineering disaster that is just waiting to happen. If you don't have a business to do in Victoria Island in the next 2 to 3 weeks, conduct your business via social media, via telephone, via meetings, Zoom meetings and online meetings, and plan ahead.
The state has also made arrangements for security operatives to be on ground to ensure safety of commuters.
He needs us to deploy more men than we deployed yesterday, and that is actually what they have done today. I want to assure you that I don't think it will never happen like that again, because we have enough men around the site and all across the state controlling the traffic so that there will be no gridlock again.
Motorists have been advised to use alternative routes provided by the state government and also cooperate with traffic management personnel on ground to ease movements.
And a 15-year-old special needs child, Kanyeya Chukwu Tagbo Keke, has set a Guinness Book of Records for painting the largest painting on canvas. The canvas, which covers a 12,303 square meters, is described by the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest canvas in the world. That's it on the program for today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.